So a lot of nonprofit leaders face the same, really complex question. Which states have the most difficult charitable registration requirements? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what makes some states more challenging than others.
We're breaking down multi-state fundraising compliance into practical, easy-to-understand terms for nonprofit leaders and their finance teams. And this resource is provided by Ironwood Registrations.
You know, if your nonprofit fundraises on a national level, you've almost certainly run into this. The requirements for charitable solicitation can vary dramatically from one state to the next, and it makes compliance feel like a really complex puzzle.
To give you a clear answer, we'll cover 5 key areas. We'll look at why requirements vary, which states have the most detailed systems, the role of financial reporting and renewals, and then finally, how to manage all this multi-state compliance stuff effectively.
Okay, first up, why are some states just so much more complex than others? Well, the short answer is that every state develops its own charitable solicitation laws and regulatory processes basically from the ground up. There's no single federal standard. So each of these factors adds up to create a unique compliance fingerprint for every state. It's not just one single requirement, it's the specific combination of documentation, financial thresholds, and those review procedures that really determines the overall complexity.
So how does this all play out in the real world? Let's highlight a few states that are known for having really detailed and thorough registration systems. These are the jurisdictions you'll definitely want to watch closely. First, let's talk about California. As one of the largest states, it has a really extensive charitable oversight system, and for good reason, to protect its millions of donors. It's not a one-and-done registration. Nonprofits fundraising there need to stay on top of annual filings and make sure their financial disclosures are always updated. Then you have New York, which has a long-standing and very comprehensive regulatory structure. A lot of this is because of its history as a major center for philanthropy. It requires registration and annual reporting, and depending on their contribution levels, many organizations also have to submit formal financial statements.
In Massachusetts, the focus is really heavy on annual reports, which have to include some very detailed financial disclosures. The crucial thing to know here is that you have to monitor the specific financial thresholds that trigger different levels of reporting. And, another key difference is the regulator itself. In Illinois, for example, it's the Attorney General's office that oversees all the registrations. This means there's an initial filing, and then for most charities, ongoing annual reporting to make sure you stay in good standing.
Okay, that brings us to one of the biggest drivers of complexity, financial reporting. Honestly, this is often where things start to get really tricky for organizations that are fundraising in a lot of states at once.
So, what do we actually mean by that?
Well, it's the legal requirement to submit financial statements that have been prepared by an independent CPA. This can range from a less intensive review to a full formal audit. And it's typically triggered once your contributions in a particular state go past a certain amount.
The challenge is that these thresholds are different everywhere. One state might require a full audit at $500,000 in revenue, but another might not require it until you hit $1 million. What this means for you is that you're constantly monitoring multiple different financial standards.
Now, beyond that initial setup, another factor that adds a layer of ongoing complexity is the annual renewal reporting. See, compliance isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous cycle.
To put it simply, this is the yearly obligation to renew your registration and give regulators updated financial information. It's how states make sure a nonprofit's info is current and that they continue to meet the legal requirements to ask for donations. For a national nonprofit, this can quickly become a major logistical headache. You're juggling dozens of different deadlines, using different forms for each state, and often trying to navigate completely separate online or paper filing systems. It really requires a super organized approach.
So here's the crucial point. For any nonprofit registered in a bunch of states, managing compliance becomes a core operational responsibility. It has to be built right into your regular workflow.
An effective system really follows a clear path. It means tracking all of your renewal deadlines, keeping your financial documents organized and ready, monitoring for any regulatory changes, and every so often, reviewing your fundraising activities to make sure you're registered everywhere you need to be.
Ultimately, while the whole system is pretty complex, understanding these state-by-state differences is actually really empowering. It allows your organization to plan its compliance strategy proactively, which in turn supports the continued, healthy growth of your fundraising programs.
And that leaves us with a final question for you to think about.
When you look at your own operations, would you say your organization's compliance strategy is proactive, where you're getting ahead of these requirements, or is it more reactive, where you're just responding when a deadline is breathing down your neck? It's definitely something to consider.